Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet both the casual crossbody bag and the casual crochet pouch, both of which you'll find as free patterns on mooglyblog.com. To make these patterns, I used a USK 6.5mm crochet hook. This one is by Susan Bates. I also used Bernat Maker for the yarn, and you can make both of these patterns using just one skein. You'll need 240 yards for the larger bag and 40 yards for the smaller pouch. I also used one 1 5/8 inch button for each piece. It's also super helpful to have stitch markers when making these patterns. Let's start by taking a closer look at our finished crossbody bag and pouch. Here we have the casual crossbody bag. This is meant to be worn in a crossbody style with a long handle. You can adjust the length of this handle to fit you. It does have a little bit of stretch, and after making it, you can further adjust the size by adjusting the size of these loops before you sew them down. You can see these loops are sent through small holes left on either side of the opening, and of course we have our button. Button is our closure, along with this loop that we make in one of the final rounds right here. You can see this loop is made while we're crocheting around. It goes through the center of the bag, through this small hole left right there, and then of course right over our button. So this is the loop that you may need to adjust the size of if you choose to use a different style or size of button. Then we have the casual crochet pouch, designed to have the same look, and of course you can make it in the same color as desired. This works really well with the bag or as a standalone piece. It's perfectly sized for all your IDs, credit cards, debit cards, all your most important things, and of course it too securely closes with the same type of loop and button fastener. The difference, of course, is that instead of putting big handles here on either side, we have one strap here on one end. This strap is a great size to work as a wristlet if you're on the go for a quick errand, or of course you can attach it to this bag or any bag that you're using. It's a great way to keep your most important cards really handy, even if you're switching bags throughout the day. To attach it to your bag, you simply find a handle or, a different loop if you're using a different kind of bag wherever you want to attach it. Send the little handle of the pouch right through, and then it's just big enough to fit right on over the pouch itself. So it's securely attached, and you can throw it right into your bag, and then when you need your stuff, instead of digging around inside the pouch, you can just find that little line and pull it right out, and everything you need is handy right where you need it. So now let's go over how to make the casual crossbody bag and the matching pouch. Both the pouch and the crossbody bag are made from the bottom up, and they both start out pretty much the same. The difference, of course, is our stitch count because the pouch is a lot narrower than the bag. So if you're making the bag, you would chain to 24. For making the pouch, we chain to 14. I'm going to go ahead and just chain to 14 right now. Again, for the full-sized bag, you'd want to chain to 24 instead. So let's see here. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Again, this is for the pouch size. For the bag, you'd want to chain 24. Then, no matter which size you're making, we skip the chain closest to the hook and herringbone half double crochet in each remaining chain across. Now, I prefer to work into the underneath hump of the chain, you can see right here, rather than under the top two loops, but you can work under whichever portion you prefer. So I'm going to skip the chain closest to the hook, come to the next chain, and make a herringbone half double crochet. To make that stitch, we start by yarning over, go into the indicated stitch, yarn over, and pull up a loop. Now we've got 3 loops on our hook, but instead of yarning over again, right away we're going to pull this loop right here through our yarn over loop. So, without yarning over again, I pull that right on through, then I yarn over and pull through the last 2 stitches. There we go. Let's do that again. We yarn over, go to the next stitch, insert our hook, yarn over and pull our loop up and through the stitch, but then also through that yarn over loop. 2 loops left on our hook. We yarn over and pull through those 2. Let's do one more together. Yarn over, go into the next stitch, yarn over and pull up our loop, pull that same loop right through that loop so that we've got just two loops left here. Then we yarn over and pull through those two. So that is how you make a herringbone half double crochet. It's a little different, but it creates a really beautiful texture that, when made in the white yarn particularly, reminds me a little bit of hobnail milk glass, if anybody else is familiar with those. I know my grandmother was a big fan and had quite a bit of it around the house, so it was really fun to discover that in this yarn, this stitch gives a very similar textured look. So for right now, we simply herringbone half double crochet in each remaining chain across. So that means if you are making the full-size bag, you'll have a total of 23, whereas if you're making the small pouch as I am here, you'll have a total of 13 stitches for row 1. So this is about what it should look like at the end of row 1. Of course, again, if it's the bag, it's going to be about 10 stitches wider. Now, one thing I like to do before I continue and move on here to round 2, notice we're switching from rows to rounds, is use a few of my stitch markers to help set myself up for success. We are going to be stitching in this next round all the way around this first row that we made. So there's a couple of things you can do to make it a little easier. I'm going to put a stitch marker right in the top of the very first stitch I made, that first herringbone half double crochet. And I'm also going to put one in the bottom of that stitch. You'll notice right there, that is my turning chain, the chain that we skipped. It does not count as a stitch, so now I've got the top and bottom of that very first stitch I made marked. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to actually do the same thing here on the last stitch. Put a stitch marker right in the top and another stitch marker right in the bottom. Now this one's right next to the slip knot, so it's a little easier to spot. But again, I just like using these little stitch markers to help me save trouble and brain space as I continue. So I'll set those out of the way here, put my hook back in, and now we're all set up for round 2. So round 2 is the same for both sizes. Again, you're just going to have a different stitch count. We'll start by chaining 1, which I actually do at the end of row 1 there, and turn, and then we're going to herringbone half double crochet in each stitch across. So now we can go ahead and go in that first stitch. I'm going to move that stitch marker up to the stitch I'm making now. So I'll get my herringbone half double crochet made here. There we go. So I go ahead and put my stitch marker right in the top of our new first stitch here. And then I'm simply going to continue making herringbone half double crochets in each stitch across the previous row. Alrighty, so I'm almost at the end here. You can see coming right up to that last stitch, which is quite handily marked for me. So I'm just going to go right in there. And now I can get that stitch marker out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and just put that one away for now. There we go. And then, now that we're at the end of this row, what we want to do is we want to put another half double crochet right in the side here, right in the side of that previous row. So if we look at it, we just crocheted into the top of the stitch. This stitch marker marks the bottom of the stitch. We've got a loop right there. So we're going to go ahead, use that loop, go right in there and put another herringbone half double crochet in there. There we go. Now we're going to keep going around that first row and put a herringbone half double crochet in the bottom of each stitch of row 1. So this is where it's really handy again to have that stitch marker. Now I know that's the first bottom of a stitch to work into here as I work across the bottom of row 1. So I can set that stitch marker aside now. Make that herringbone half double crochet. And now I'm just going to continue working herringbone half double crochets until I get to that next stitch marker there at the bottom of our very first stitch. Okay, so here I am at that last stitch, the bottom of the last stitch, right next to our slip knot there. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch right in there. Take that stitch marker on out of the way for a moment. I'm going to keep that one nearby because now I want to come over here to this end. And again, we need to look at what we've done. We've got a stitch right into the bottom of that stitch. There's the top of our first stitch right there. Remember, we've got that little chain or turning chain or the end of the stitch row of stitching, I guess in this case it would be right there. we want to go ahead and again put a stitch right in the end of row 1. So you can just find 2 little strands there to go under. We can go ahead and finish that stitch. Now this will be the last stitch of this round, so I'm going to go ahead and put my second stitch marker right back in that last stitch. And then we can join with a slip stitch to that first marked stitch. So I like to keep from here on out a stitch marker in the first and last stitch of each round, just so that I don't accidentally end up working into that slip stitch, and I always know where the beginning and end of my round are. So if it's trying to sort of go this way, that's fine. You can just pop it back through this way. Now it's right side out, and we're all set up to continue. At the end of round 2, if you are making the full-size bag, you should have a total of 48 stitches, while here on the smaller pouch, you should have a total of 28. From here, we're just going to continue to work in rounds of herringbone half double crochet. Chain 1 and herringbone half double crochet in each stitch around. For the full-sized bag, that would be a total of 21 rounds, or until the bag is about 7 1/4 inches tall, or shorter if you'd like it shorter, or taller if you'd like it taller. For the little pouch, I like to do about 8 rounds, or again, as tall as it needs to be to fit your ID cards, debit cards, and whatever else you'd like to carry. Then we'll come back and do the top of the bag. So here you can see I've added a couple more rounds to my pouch. All I do is chain 1, herringbone half double crochet in each stitch around, join with a slip stitch, and continue to keep those stitch markers in the first and last stitch of each round. So again, from here, I can go on and actually add as many rounds as I'd like to make the height of the pouch that I'd like. But one more time, for the full-size bag, you'd want to go to about round 21, and for the pouch, you'd want to go to about round 8. Then we switch to the top of the bag, which is a little different for each piece depending on what you're making because they have 2 different handle styles. Because I've been making the pouch size, let's go over that one first. For round 1, we would start again with a chain 1, and then we're going to back loop only single crochet in the first stitch. So let's move that stitch marker out of the way for a moment. And for back loop only single crochet, we want to take a look at the top 2 loops of each stitch. And for the back loop only, we're going to go under just the loop that's furthest away from us. In this case, it will be the loop that's on the inside of the bag. So just like that, I put my hook right under just that back loop, yarn over, pull up my loop, and make my single crochet. So then I'm going to go ahead and mark that stitch as it's the new first stitch of our round. And then I'm going to back loop only single crochet in the next 4 stitches. So there's 1, 2, again, make sure you go under just that back loop only, 3, and 4. Double check. Yes. So now after that, we then chain 3 and skip the next 3 stitches. This is going to create the opening at the front of our bag that will sew the button right underneath. So we chain 3, 1, 2, 3, skip 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, put my thumb right there on the next stitch. After that, we back loop only single crochet in the next 12. So starting in that next stitch right there after the ones we've skipped, there's 1, 2, just take your time, make sure you get under that back loop only, 3, 4, 5. Now, this back loop only thing is really just for looks. So if you don't actually like the look of the back loop only and you prefer to work under both of those top loops, you absolutely can. I just thought it gave a nice little textural difference here as we come around the top of the bag. So I'm just working on those 12 back loop only single crochets. I should be getting really close, so let's stop for a moment and count. We can start counting right after those 3 we skipped. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Just right. So after those, then we're going to make our back loop only picot single crochet. And picot single crochet, like every picot-based stitch, could have really any number of loops. So we always have to write it out. If you want to check the written instructions for any pattern that calls for a picot single crochet, and look for the special stitches section. In this case, what we're going to do is insert our hook in that next stitch. So we're going back loop only again, yarn over and pull up our loop. But now we're going to chain a total of 10 times. So we just yarn over and pull through just that that loop we just made, the one we just pulled up through the stitch. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now, one thing you'll notice is I tried to keep this loop relatively small so it didn't pull up too much. And now we've got these all made. Now this loop is going to be what fits around your button to seal up your bag or pouch. So if you're using a different sized button, you will need to adjust the number of chains right here for your specific button. After we've done those 10 chains, we just yarn over, hold those 2 loops here on our hook real close, and pull through both of those loops like that. So that is our picot single crochet. But now what we're going to do next, after we've finished that, and we make the same sort of picot single crochet for both the bag and the pouch, we back loop only single crochet in each remaining stitch. So as we go to that next stitch, we want to make sure to push this loop to the inside of the bag. And then go right to that very next stitch, back loop only, and make our single crochet. So you can see from the outside of the bag, there's just maybe a little indentation there, but the loop is going towards the inside of the bag. So then we just back loop only, single crochet in each remaining stitch. So that should land us in our final stitch with a stitch marker. So I'm almost there for this one. Just a couple more stitches here. Right there is my stitch marker. So that's the one I want to put my last stitch of the round in. And of course I need to move that stitch marker up here to my new final stitch. And join with a slip stitch right in that very first stitch. I'm not going to move that stitch marker out of the way though. I want to leave it there for right now. So now here's where you want to come back and check your work. I find that with the herringbone half double crochet and a tight slip stitch, my seam actually stays really straight. The herringbone half double crochet has its own lean that seems to correct the natural lean of crochet, at least for the first couple dozen rounds. You also, though, like I say, if you've been changing your, gauge or using perhaps a different number of rows, maybe you've made it a lot longer and you find that you have discovered a lean, you'll want to stop and make sure that your loop and your opening line up. You may need to adjust the stitch counts here if you have played with the size of your bag and you started to acquire a lean in your seam. Otherwise, it should line up pretty nicely right here. So you can just pull that loop right through that chain 3 hole we made. And of course, the button would get sewn right under there. So that's how we do the first round of the top of the bag for the pouch. Now let's take a closer look at the first round for the top of the bag for the full-sized bag. So here I have the finished bag portion of the crossbody bag with all of the top portions made. I just haven't attached the handles or the button. You can see it's got the same chain 3, skip 3 opening for our picot single crochet loop to come through. The only differences are that, of course, there are quite a few more stitches, and on each end, we've got a chain 1 and skip 1. So you can follow along with the written instructions for this one to know right where to put those chain 1, skip 1s and how to line up that hole and loop. Again, if you've altered the stitch count or the number of rows, you may want to go back and just make sure again that those do line up really nicely. After that first round of getting those holes set up, then we go on to round 2 of the top. For the bag, the full-size bag, rounds 2 and 3 are quite simple. We just chain 1 and single crochet in each stitch and chain around. You can choose to work into the individual chains or into the chain spaces. You can see on this one, I worked 3 stitches right into the chain space, whereas on this one, I chose to work a stitch into each of the individual chains. It's a slightly different look, and honestly, I couldn't decide which one I liked better, so you can choose for yourself whichever you'd like to do. And then, of course, you can single crochet right into that chain 1 space or into the chain 1 over the space. For the pouch, however, it's just a little bit different because we need to add this long handle right here. So let's come back to our little pouch. We've finished round 1 of the top, and now we're ready for round 2. Rather than just chaining 1 and starting to single crochet, right now, right away, is where we make that long handle. So again, if you want to adjust the size of this strap, this is a great chance to do so. Now, we're not going to be working back into these chains, So I like to make them a little bit tighter. And I found for me a chain of about 30 was just right, both as a wrist strap and to fit around the finished pouch. But again, if you're maybe substituting yarns or you have a different gauge, different hook size, you may want to alter that stitch count to make your strap the right length for you. So rather than count to 30 today, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here and say, okay, that looks like a pretty good length to me. So we'll just go ahead and say that that is our 30 chains. Now, one thing I do want to do, especially now that I've ruffled it around a bit, is make sure that that's nice and straight. It hasn't become twisted at all, so that I can come right back down here and go right into our first stitch of the round with a single crochet. Just like that, right into our first marked stitch. And then, of course, I can move that stitch marker right up to the top of that single crochet. I'm not going to put it in any of the chains. We just leave that hanging. There we go. And get that stitch marked. Then, again, we can just single crochet all the way around. That's really the only difference we had to do right there to make our handle was make that long chain right up front. Of course, the pouch style doesn't have the chain 1 on the sides, but we still have that chain 3. And again, you can go into each one of these individual chains if that's the look you like, or just work 3 single crochets right into that chain 3 opening. That one's certainly quicker, but again, a slightly different look. Then we just go right back to single crocheting in each stitch around until we get back to the beginning of the round. Now, as you can see, I haven't quite made it all the way around, really only about halfway here, but I wanted to point out as we come back around here, we come to that picot single crochet. We're going to make sure to ignore all those chains and just work right under those top 2 loops of the stitch as if it were any other single crochet. We want to maintain our stitch count here, so the same number of stitches we've been doing around throughout the rest of the pattern. And of course, then when we come all the way around here and we get back to our final stitch here, let's go ahead and finish this round up together. I'm going to move that stitch marker out of the way. Got our little tail trying to join the fun. There we go. So that is our last stitch of the round. We want to maintain that stitch marker in there. And now, whereas before with that picot single crochet, we wanted to make sure that loop ended up on the inside of the bag. Now, because it's a handle, we want it on the outside. So we just go ahead. Let me get my fingers all arranged here. We're going to pull that pouch right to the outside and then pull that handle to the outside of the pouch and then slip stitch to that first stitch. Just give it a tug right there so that we know it ends up on the outside of our pouch. And then we're all set up for the final round of either the bag or the pouch. To finish off the final round of the bag or the pouch, you can use your choice of stitches. For the bag, I used another round of single crochet. For the pouch, I did a round of slip stitch. I wanted to give the pouch a little bit of a more firm edge because I know that this one's going to be used possibly a little bit more. Whereas the bag, I wanted to keep a little smoother edge here because we've got our handles coming over that section. Again, it's really whatever look you prefer. You can make them match a little bit more, but I kind of like the contrast between the 2 finishes. After that final round for the bag portion or the pouch, for the pouch, of course, you're done crocheting. All you have left to do is sew on that button, again, right underneath the chain 3 space right there. And I just used a little bit of matching yarn. If you have big enough holes in your button, you can use your finishing needle right through those holes. If your holes in your button are a little too small, you can use a little bit of thinner yarn or even a bit of dental floss if you'd like. And I do have separate tutorials for that on my page. For the full-size bag, same finishing. We want to add our button here right beneath that chain 3 space. But of course, then we also get to add our handles. Now, the bag handle for the full-size crossbody bag can definitely be adjusted to your size. I started with a chain of 151, but you can hold it up to yourself, take your own measurements, and definitely adjust it, again, for your preferred length. So, to begin, we want to leave about a 10-inch tail. This is going to be used for seaming up our handle later. Then we can go ahead and make our slip knot here. Now, I'm not going to chain 151. We're just going to do just a few here to demonstrate the fabric of the handle itself. So I'm just going to chain, and again, it doesn't matter what stitch count here for the handle. It's literally just the length, so you don't have to worry about a stitch multiple or anything like that. So for our little demo today, we're going to say that's the tiny little handle length that we desire. So after you have chained that length, then we are going to skip the chain closest to the hook and slip stitch in each remaining chain across. Now again, I really prefer at this point to work under that underneath hump. It's just going to give a much nicer finished edge to our handle, because then rather than having the one loop there at the bottom, we've got two loops, so it looks a little bit more like the top of a stitch, and it makes the whole handle look a little bit more even. So you can see I'm slip stitching here, but I'm going to be working back into these slip stitches. So that means I am making sure to take my time, and when I pull up that loop, I make sure both of these loops are the same size before I finish my slip stitch. This is going to make it a whole lot easier to work back into later on. So then I work right up to my last chain there, and that is row 1 for our bag handle. For row 2 of our bag handle, we start by chaining 1. Of course, then I need to turn. And now we're going to do a front loop only slip stitch in each stitch across. You'll remember before we were going under the back loop only. Now we're going to go under the front loop only. Oops, let me get that out of the way, which is the loop that's always closest to us. So of course, we're not going to work into our turning chain. We're going to go right back to that first stitch and just go right under that front loop. And then finish our slip stitch. So now I'm kind of coming from this angle, and I can use my fingers to feel that we're only going under that front loop of each stitch. I still want to take my time, get those loops to be the same size. This will help your slip stitches be a little more even, as well as being easier to work into for the next row. We only have 3 rows in this handle, so it's pretty quick, but you do still want to take your time with your slip stitches. All right, so I've worked my way across here on our tiny little handle example. So now at the end here of row 2, I'm going to stop and break my yarn again. And once again, I want to leave a 10-inch tail for sewing. Now I'm not going to measure this out. It doesn't really need to be a full 10 inches. We just want to make sure we leave enough. So I'm just going to eyeball it, cut my yarn, and then go ahead and finish off this end. There we go. Now this is how we make sure that we're going to have tails at both ends to do our sewing with. So now I'm going to turn my work and grab my yarn and finish up with row 3. Now again, I'm going to leave a long tail for sewing, and I'm going to go ahead and put a slip knot right on my hook here. This one's not quite as long, but that's okay. I know I've got plenty here now. And finally, for row 3, we're going to come back and work another row of front loop only slip stitching. So we're going to find that first stitch right there. And again, just go right under that front loop. You can see I've got my slip knot on my hook. I go right under that front loop. I'm holding on to the tail of my work right now, the yarn I'm working with, to help stabilize it a little bit. So I can pull that loop through. I'm going to give them a little zhuzh like this to get the loops back close together. And then I can make that slip stitch right there. And we've joined with our slip stitch right in that front loop only. So now we simply continue to front loop only, slip stitch all the way across. Of course, your handle is going to need to be quite a bit longer than this, but this really does create what I think is a really beautifully attractive handle. I actually like both sides of this handle quite a bit and went back and forth for quite a while trying to decide which one I wanted to officially say was the right side. So I decided it's going to have to be up to you guys. I've front loop only slip stitched all the way across here. I'm going to break again, leaving another long tail for sewing just to make it easy on myself so I don't have to cut any extra yarn. We're going to use those tails, right? We've got to weave them in anyway. We can finish that off. And just like that, we've made our handle. So this is what it looks like on this side. And this is what it looks like on this side. Like I say, I really actually enjoy the look of both sides. I think I settled on this one being my right side, but whichever one you want to put on the outside of your handle is totally fine and up to you. It does have a bit of stretch that's simply inherent in the yarn and the yarn construction. So if you want a completely non-stretchy handle, you'll need to either use leather or fabric, specifically fabric that doesn't stretch, or you can take your crocheted handle and actually line it, sew in a pretty bit of ribbon for another beautiful look. So now I've got my bag and my full length handle. Again, you want to take just a moment and decide, gosh, which one am I going to make the outside of my handle? Once you've decided, tough decision, I know, then we're going to take our handle and we're going to send it through that chain 1 space on either end. I didn't make these huge because I'm using crochet and they squish pretty well. If you're using a purchased handle, they a lot of times have metal rings that should also fit through there really well. So you can see I'm coming from the outside of the bag towards the inside of the bag with that tail end there. So now I can just kind of use a stitch marker or something to pin that where I think I might want it. Just gonna hold those together here. And then I do want to take the time to be really careful with my handle and make sure I don't put a twist in it. So I just go through it just like so. You can see right here. Make sure, maybe do it again. Okay, this is the outside at the top here. Pull through and then carefully put it through that hole at the other end, that same direction. We want to make sure we don't put a twist in our handle. We just gently pull that all the way through. So now with both of those ends pulled through there, we've got all our ends for sewing going crazy. There we go. We can use another stitch marker to hold these ends together. And then I recommend this is where you try it on. Everybody is going to wear it a little bit differently, have a different comfort place where they like it. If you're using a fabric handle or a ribbon handle, you want to do the same thing and adjust your length. And you can obviously pull this loop, if you need a couple more inches. Let me get that stitch marker back out of the way. You can pull this down and kind of sew it on really tight. If you discover, gosh, this handle's a fair bit longer than I need, you can put the seam in right there. And of course, you can have a lot of fun with it. There are lots of fun different ways you can actually attach your handles if you want to get creative and come up with your own look. I've done different tied handles before, which I think are a lot of fun. Just make sure to use those ends to kind of sew it in so it doesn't come undone from you. And of course, if you are using pre-purchased handles, it's great to use the kind that can come off so you can throw your bag in the wash for sewing later. So after you've sewed on those handles and added that button, you'll be all set. And that's how to crochet the casual crossbody bag and the casual crochet pouch. Again, you'll find both of these patterns free on mooglyblog.com. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.